Today we are talking about fat loss. So key questions is, how does fat loss work, right? Is it really just about, moving more and eating less? What's the process of losing fat? And most importantly, what influences fat loss? Meaning, what are the areas that you have control of and also don't have control of when it comes to fat loss? We're going to be diving deep into these questions as well as answering the question of like why it's easier for some and harder for others as well when it comes to fat loss. Also, why gamers and specifically struggle with fat loss, and what we can do to turn it into something that is a high level skill, or in our words, a mastery. So I'm going to share my screen here and dive straight in. All right. So the fat loss mastery, as you can see at the top, we have fat loss and then mastery. It previously we described it as fat burning, and even though it's such a minor difference between fat loss and fat burning when it comes to meaning and terminology, it actually has a much deeper meaning when it comes to the process of losing fat, because burning fat doesn't necessarily mean you are losing fat. And the big reason why is we're constantly burning some type of energy, but the process of fat loss is much more complex than just fat burning. For example, having a super high intensity workout where you're jumping around doing a whole bunch of stuff, yes, that might result in burning more fat in that small window of time. But when it comes to losing fat over a long period of time, it is completely different. So sure, you could burn more in the short term, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose fat in the long term. And fat loss is a long-term game that we're playing here. So wanted to start that off as far as fat loss goes. Now, you might see a couple different colors here and a couple different sections with the pie chart in the beginning, or in the middle, I should say. So what is this pie chart? Well, basically this is how much is influenced when it comes to calorie deficit. So there's something right here in the side. It might be hiding a little bit. I'm going to highlight it over here. But that is a calorie deficit. So again, without diving too deep, what is a calorie deficit? Is simply put, is burning more than you are consuming, right? It's a fundamental physiology when it comes to how you lose weight, right? Or specifically how you lose weight, right? Not fat, right? Big difference, because there's a lot of things when it comes to weight loss that happens. For example, when you lose weight, that also affects water retention, right? It affects stored energy in your liver and your muscles. And of course, that also considers muscle mass as well. So that's why we want to shoot for fat loss. And that's why we are in the Fat Loss Academy, right? Because we want to focus 100% on losing fat, not losing muscle, and not losing all the other stuff when it comes to weight loss. So, what are each section of this pie chart that you see here? Well, the biggest section in red is BMR. I'm going to highlight the name right over here. Big section, BMR. What is BMR? It is called the basal metabolic rate. In the yellow section to the left is NEAT, which is an acronym for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. We then have in green TEF, which is the thermic effect of food. And then we have EAT. No, it's not eat. It is exercise activity thermogenesis. So let's dive into each one of these areas because each one of these areas are very, very important. And let's first start with BMR. Okay. So with BMR takes up 70% of our daily calorie burn. Okay. This whole entire chart is again the the burning aspect of fat loss. So calorie burn. So what makes up your basal metabolic rate? As you can see on the right here, number one is your body composition. So what is your body composition? It basically is how much fat you have in your body, how much muscle you have in your body, your bone structure, and things like that. All of that determines your basal metabolic rate. And as you can see on the right here, one of the big influences for your body composition when it comes to your basal metabolic rate or your BMR is your muscle. So the more muscle you have, the more energy your body needs to keep it. Muscle takes up a lot of energy to maintain. Okay. It is one of the it's the most active, I guess, group of organs in our body when it comes to the amount of calories required to operate and function, to stand up straight. Even when we're sitting, yeah, we use less muscles, but even the act of sitting and staying upright requires energy. Sure, it's not as much energy as standing up, kind of like what I'm doing, but it still requires energy. And without that energy being allocated to your muscle, we essentially are immobile. Wouldn't be moving at all, even our head. So that's a huge, huge part, and that's probably one of the biggest takeaways. And you could kind of put this all together yourself as far as, how can I lose more fat? Well, body composition, right? Next is weight. So people who are heavier or have more weight on their body actually burn more calories because it takes more energy for them to maintain and control their body, right? Because they're larger, right? Which means organs are bigger, limbs are bigger, and some people their brain is bigger, right? And that all that takes energy to function. So heavier people actually have higher BMR. Height also is a factor as well. And it's for a reason other than longer ligaments, it's actually skin. So taller people have more surface area on their skin, right? Again, longer ligaments is a factor, sure, but it's really more about heat and how much heat is being dispersed and dissipated. All of that is energy, right? So people who generally are taller have higher BMRs, which generally tall people are quote unquote skinnier for a number of different reasons. But one of the reasons why is because of their higher BMR. That takes up, again, 70% of your daily calorie burn. Okay. Next is age. This is on the opposite end of the spectrum here. When you get older, your BMR goes down. In a way, you can kind of associate BMR as your metabolism. Okay. So what makes up your metabolism? Basically everything that we're talking about over here in the bottom right. So when you get older, your BMR goes down. This is why it's much, much more difficult for older people to lose body fat. Because simply put, they are burning less calories because their body is just operating less, right? It's taking less energy for your body to basically live and survive and burn because things are deteriorating over time, right? Especially one big factor is muscle. So older people, because of muscle degradation and losing muscle over time, just naturally means that guess what? Less muscle, less calorie burn, less BMR. Okay. Then there's the thyroid. This is very, very important as well. Um, There is hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism. Hyper means that you have a hyperactive thyroid, which means now you are actually, affecting all the processes when it comes to burning calories, which means you're actually burning more. And again, this is not a good thing for a lot of people, right? Especially if like it can affect so many other processes in your body if you have hyperthyroidism. And then you have also hypothyroidism, which is the essentially the enemy of fat loss. So typically people who have hypothyroidism typically are burning less calories because their thyroid isn't operating effectively. So these are the people that struggle with weight loss. Like no matter how much they move, no matter how much they eat, um, it's very, very difficult for them to lose weight because they're basically their BMR is reduced, or in other words, their metabolism, right? And all the processes involved. Last but not least is genetics. So genetics essentially just create the baseline. So generally, you could take two people that literally are the same height, same weight. They could even be identical twins. But genetically, one person could just burn more calories, right? Naturally. Um, and then you could have one person that also just naturally burns less calories, right? So a lot of BMR is basically baseline, right? It's just based on your body, your genetics, your age, and also, oh, I skipped over something very important, gender. Men actually burn more calories than women. Part of the reason why is muscle. So men have more muscle mass than women. So typically BMR is higher for men than women. So, right? I mean, we're not going to get into changing your gender, but even if you do that, everything is baseline. It's everything set in stone when it comes to genetics, uh, how how you're aging, your height, and you know, the only thing we have control of is body composition, right? So your weight and your muscle. So, big takeaway for BMR is that one of the biggest ways that we can influence BMR is by number one, reducing your body weight, which actually lowers your BMR, but we can also increase your BMR by adding more muscle. So, muscle is key. I'm going to start that right over here. Muscle is one of the only ways to positively impact basal metabolic rate. Everything else is pretty much set in stone. So, how much can you influence it? That depends, right? If you're putting on 30 pounds of muscle, yeah, you're gonna look at a significant amount of increase in BMR, right? But if you put on 5 pounds, is 5 pounds a lot? It might not look by looking at you, like if you had a before and after of you with 5 pounds less of muscle and 5 pounds more, you probably can't visually see it because it's distributed throughout your whole entire body, but it's actually very, very significant when it comes to the amount of BMR because that extra 5 pounds compounded every single day for 24 hours for the next 6 months to a year, if you could maintain it, can result in massive calorie burn and ultimately fat loss over time. So that's the power of muscle. It's very, very important when it comes to the process of fat loss. Now let's move over to the upper left-hand corner. Let's talk about NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. As you can see here, 15% of your daily calorie burn is makes up NEAT. Now, what is it? Well, part of it is non-exercise. So basically, this is just movement naturally throughout the day. Now, what is what is that? Well, number one, occupation is one of the biggest drivers of that. So this is the type of job that you have. Do you have a manual labor job? Do you have a desk job? Do you have a job that requires you to stand all day? Are you constantly moving? That really does determine a lot. It's not necessarily exercise, right? It's not intentional, focused movement that is specifically for building up a sweat or other training benefits. This is just natural movement throughout the day based on your occupation. Some occupations will cause you to burn more calories, some occupations will cause you to burn less. But at the end of the day, that's something that we have control of, right? We have control of where we work and what we do at work, right? Sometimes you don't have control of, you know, uh, for example, having a desk job, right? You work at a desk, right? There's not really much you can do to get more movement other than perhaps getting a standing desk, for example. Now, at least you'll be way more inclined to move around, right? And stand up and burn more calories indirectly. So that's really, really big. Also, lifestyle. If you have a dog, for example, right? That is one of the best ways to get more activity and movement in throughout the day. If you walk to work or you take the bus or you basically, do things that require you to take the stairs and travel places, yeah, that's going to have a big effect on how many calories you burn. And then, of course, environment. Having places like the gym down the street, right? Being able to go to a local park, right, and walk around in the park. Having that accessibility is really, really big, and that can have a big impact on the amount of calories that you burn. And of course, body weight also affects non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Simply put, the heavier you are, the more you are burning because it just takes more energy for you to maintain your heavier body, right? Compared to somebody who is weighing less or is lighter. So naturally, what happens is you can have two people, right? One that's heavier and one that's lighter, and you can have them both do the same activity, but the heavier person will burn more calories. Okay? That's why it's a lot harder to lose body fat as you lose weight and it slows down like this because it's just the activities that you're doing just burns less calories because you're lighter, right? It's less taxing on your body. Then there's also social or cultural norms. Fasting, for example, in some religions, that could be also affected by going out to a bar or something, right? That that is like, I don't know, something that you do every Friday with your friends or family, right? Like all that's going to affect, how many calories you burn on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And then last but not least, technology. Technology decreases non-exercise activity thermogenesis simply because you're not moving your body when you are using technology typically, right? So you could think a computer, you could think your phone, right? A watch, whatever piece of technology typically, and we all know that, right? It reduces our activity, right? Especially us gamers, right? We know we're sitting down, and holding our handheld or looking at a TV or holding a controller, right? We know activity is down. So we could look at all these other things, especially in this category, that can influence or mitigate those negative effects of using technology, for example. So these are all very, very important areas to kind of reflect on in your day-to-day life. And you can start asking yourself, how can I increase the amount of calories I burn in each one of these areas: occupation, lifestyle, environment, social and cultural norms, as well as technology. Super, super big. Two more categories to go. Again, all of this is equally important in regards to how it influences your fat loss, but some have a bigger impact more than others. So that next thing is TEF. So the thermic effect of food in green here. If if we are directed to the lower left-hand corner in green, the thermic effect of food is essentially the amount of energy required for your body to digest food. Plain and simple. So, what affects that? Well, number one, it is the type of nutrient. So, what you're putting inside your body. And there is a massive, massive difference in specifically the macronutrients that you put inside your body. And the number one macronutrient to put inside your body is protein. If if you need a refresher, a reminder, especially in the, in the academy quests, and also, me always preaching protein. This is why protein is, well, one of the reasons why protein is so important is that when we digest protein, it takes 20 to 30% of what we just ate as energy to digest it. So, for example, if you eat 100 calories of protein, approximately 20 to 30 calories of what you just ate is used to digest what you just ate. Think about it. It has a negative net effect when it comes to the what you just put inside your body. That's why we want to prioritize protein above everything that we have here, because carbohydrates only takes about 5 to 10%. So if we had 100 calories of carbohydrates, that's only about 5 to 10 calories of what we just ate being used as energy. Then the least is fats. So that's 0 to 3%. This is why fats are a little bit lower on the totem pole, so to speak, when it comes to specifically fat loss. Muscle building is a different conversation. But for fat loss, we want to maximize TEF, or the thermic effect of food, by consuming more protein. On top of that, when we consume more protein, that also helps with body composition, which affects BMR over here in the bottom right, right? Remember, muscle affects how many calories we burn on a day-to-day basis. So everything is interconnected, and it starts first with protein. Something else that influences TEF is the size of your meals. So, there's popular belief that more meals throughout the day boosts your metabolism. Well, I hate to break it to you, but bigger meals burns more calories because it is number one, bigger meals takes more energy at one time, right? So when you're consuming these bigger meals all at one time, it takes an enormous amount of energy, right? Compared to multiple times throughout the day. So you could have a big meal and you could have a small meal. Small meal, let's say the small meal burns, I don't know, it takes 10 calories, for example. But just the fact that you have a bigger meal can take upwards of 40 calories. And the fact that you're burning, you have to allocate more energy to break down that massive meal you have, which means, boom, more calories. Again, it's very, very small. It's very, very minute. Some might say it's so insignificant you shouldn't even worry about it. At the end of the day, it's a matter of making sure you focus on the big thing right over here, which is a calorie deficit. If you are having bigger meals and it's causing you to eat more, right? And you're not in a calorie deficit, are bigger meals better than smaller meals? No, right? But if smaller meals throughout the day are allowing you to consistently stay in a calorie deficit, which is better, smaller or bigger? Obviously, smaller meals because it's working better for you. It goes into what we just talked about in yellow, which is occupation, lifestyle, environment, and things like that, right? What works best for you is what matters the most. But there's two other areas that affect TEF. That's the composition of what's inside your meals. So the distribution of how much protein you have in your meal, how much carbohydrates, and how much fats. That's going to have a big impact. And of course, like I mentioned before, the more protein that you have in your meal, the more calories that you'll burn. And last but not least, processing. This is very, very important and underrated. I'm going to star this. This is something that I had a big mistake. I made a big mistake growing up, or and not even that, even in my early days of focusing on fat loss as a professional, I basically only focused on macros. And listen, that is great for when you first start out, right? It's important to know what you're putting inside your body and the right nutrients to put inside your body, but this is the one area that I neglected and it hurt my body composition and my ability to lose fat, which is choosing between processed foods and whole foods. So whole foods will takes so much more energy for your body to break down and process than processed foods, simply because processed foods are pre-processed. Right? They're processed already. And so it's easier for your body to digest these things faster, which means that's less energy and less calories that your body is using to digest your food, right? But if you take whole foods, it takes much, much more energy to do that, on top of the fact that you get more nutrients for your body through whole foods and a plethora of other benefits. But specifically when it comes to fat loss and the calories that we're burning, whole foods will always be king over processed foods. Again, the only thing processed foods give us is primarily convenience, right? It's accessibility and convenience. Ideally, if we have the option, we always want to choose whole foods because, again, you'll burn more calories and you'll increase your NEAT, which is your non exercise or should I say your TEF, your the thermic effect of food, specifically in green here. Okay. Whole foods over processed, no matter what. So again, all of this, everything that we just talked about, the type of nutrients, meal size, as well as frequency, the composition, and the processing only takes up about 10% of your daily calorie burn. Now, again, it might not seem much at all, but remember, even 1% change compounded over time can be significant. So this is why, again, we want to dive into each one of these specific areas and see what areas we can optimize and improve, and always focus on 1%. Remember, plus 1% XP per day. Remember that. Plus 1% XP per day means after 100 days, you leveled up. So you compound that with 5% a day, 6% per day, right? Now you are leveling up multiple times. So you can choose one area, and then the next 100 days, you will have more fat loss. So remember that. But let's finish up here. The last category, EAT. What is it? Exercise activity thermogenesis. This is so shocking for a lot of people. This is why they say you can't out-train a bad diet. EAT only makes up 5% of your daily calorie burn compared to the thermic effect of eating your food and your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is your activity throughout the day naturally. So this is shocking for a lot of people. And I always default to this clear explanation. And it's a workout is 1 hour or less, right? And what, 2 hours most for some people out there who push themselves, right? There are 23 hours left in the day. That, in those 23 hours, that is where the real progress is, right? What you're doing in the 23 hours outside of your workouts, that's going to have the biggest impact on your fat loss, right? And just to remind everyone here, remember, that doesn't mean training and workouts are useless. They are required simply because, remember, in the BMR section, in the bottom right in red, muscle is one of the biggest factors in determining BMR. So the more muscle you have, the more calories you're going to burn. And the only way to build muscle is with exercise. Remember that. So I'm not trying to say exercise isn't important. I'm just saying when it comes to maximizing your fat loss, remember, exercise is important to add that extra 5% calorie burn for the day. Remember, 1% better is enough. So 5%, getting up to 5% through exercise can be significant compounded over time. But what makes up EAT? Number one, intensity, right? So if you're doing higher intensity workouts, you're gonna burn more calories, which is the fat burning part that I was sharing in the very beginning. As you can see, now that you have all this newfound knowledge here, it's not just about how much you're burning inside your workout. It's so many other areas that comes into fat loss for a longer period of time. But higher intensity workouts do burn more calories. So that's a huge factor in increasing your EAT. Next is duration. Pretty self-explanatory. The longer you're working out, the longer your heart rate is elevated, the more calories you're going to burn. Plain and simple. So if you're doing a 5-minute workout compared to a 30-minute workout, obviously the 30-minute workout is going to burn more calories. Then there's frequency. This is very underrated. Um, if you are training twice a week and you bump up your training to 4 times per week, you're gonna burn more calories. But remember, it's not the end all be all when it comes to the total amount of calories that you're burning here. So remember, frequency is just a small variable that can have an impact on the amount of calories that you're burning, right? Because if you're working out more, or should I say more often, then you're going to burn more calories. Then there's also the type of exercise, right? For example, when you're lifting weights, your heart rate elevates for, I don't know, less than 30 seconds, and then you take a long rest period, right? Compared to, for example, swimming, right? When you're using your whole entire body for an extended period of time, even cycling, right? You're cycling for a continuous duration, your body's moving constantly compared to, for example, lifting weights. So that's one big reason why most people default to cardio over weights, is because technically you are burning more calories by doing cardio, but over the long term, you're burning less because you have less muscle. So the person who's lifting weights over a long period of time is going to end up burning more body fat, even though they're burning less calories during the process of lifting weights compared to someone who's doing cardio. And that's why you want to do both, because they're both equally important for different reasons, right? Also, if you weigh more, right, if you are a heavier person, you're going to burn more calories than the person who's super fit or has ripped abs or is naturally skinny. Because again, every movement that you make requires more energy for you because you're just heavier. It takes more time or more energy for your body to move your body, for your body to move your body. Love it. And part of that is stress, right? It's more stress on your body. The more stress, the more energy, more calories that you're burning, compared to someone who's lighter, right? But and has less stress on their joints, their ligaments, and just their bodily functions. And last but not least, here we have your fitness level. So people who are new to doing weight training and exercise will always burn more calories than people who've been doing it for a long period of time, for years, simply because of adaptation, right? Your body adapts to the training and the stress that you put on your body. So the people who have spent years kind of putting their body under stress, over time, every single activity that they do, the amount of calories that they burn becomes less and less and less over time, which also connects to back to BMR when we were talking about age, right? Because when you get older, things also affect how many calories you burn, and also the amount of muscle that you have becomes less. So all this is influenced by your fitness level, which is why everyone who's a beginner is primed and ready to get the fastest and most profound results compared to somebody who's been doing this for like 5, 6 years, right? Fitness level is a huge, huge factor in the amount of calories that you're burning compared to somebody who's experienced. So, all that being said, that is fat loss in a nutshell. Really diving deep into all of the factors when it comes to things that you have control of and things that you don't have control of, right? From BMR, so basal metabolic rate, which takes up about 70% of your daily calorie burn in red, to NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis, in yellow, that makes up all the things that you're doing throughout the day based on all these different factors when it comes to occupation, lifestyle, environment, as well as TEF, the thermic effect of food, how much how much your calories that your body requires to just digest and process what you're putting inside your body. And then last but not least, EAT, exercise activity thermogenesis, the amount of calories you're burning through intentional exercise, which is influenced by intensity, duration, frequency, and other factors. So, big question they might be asking is like, cool, how can I maximize fat loss? Well, number one is going to be, so here's how to essentially min max. Here's how to min max fat loss. Number one is increase your muscle. Plain and simple. It has the highest return on your investment, period. If you have more muscle, naturally you will be leaner, right? Naturally you'll have less body fat, right? There's a difference between building muscle um, and using muscle as part of your fat loss efforts. Next is going to be having control over your NEAT. So, what you're doing throughout the day, your daily habits culminate into the bigger picture you paint of ourselves. So, part of the reason I'm able to um, stay pretty consistent when it comes to either my weight loss, fat loss, or just weight management is this simple habit that I have right here is in all of my meetings, throughout the day, even at work, I am standing. I have a standing desk and I use that for all of my meetings. So I built this habit, and in the process of building this habit, this is calorie burn. I'm burning far more calories standing right now than I would be in my chair. And that habit compounded over years is years of calorie burn and weight loss, essentially. So little things like that, really looking at, what you're doing throughout the day, even at work, traveling to work, going to the grocery store, movement throughout the day is powerful. Number three here is really diving deep into protein, right? Prioritizing protein in every single meal is going to completely change your body composition because you're going to be able to recover faster, build more muscle from your training, and you're going to be able to burn more calories because you are burning more by digesting protein, which is the highest, it's the most difficult nutrient for your body to digest, which means it takes more energy, which means it takes more calories. And the more calories you burn means the closer that we get into a calorie deficit, right? And if I were to throw a number four in there, I would say one of the biggest impacts of how much fat loss that you can accrue over time, it would be frequency. Plain and simple, if you average 2 workouts per week and you go from 2 workouts to 3 workouts per week, you're gonna burn more fat. It's not rocket science, right? the the more that you do, generally, the more calories you're gonna burn, right? And the more fat loss you're gonna have, right? But it's more about like what you're doing in that activity that does have an effect, which we talked about when it comes to the type of exercise, the intensity, the duration, and other factors like that. So, but one of the biggest ways to basically create almost immediate progress is by increasing your frequency. So, look at where you are as far as on average, how many workouts you're showing up to on a weekly basis, and just increase that number by one. And you will see a noticeable difference in the weight fluctuations on the scale, the consistencies, and overall your fat loss progress over time. All that being said, that is fat loss mastery in the realm of infinite. Let me know if you have any questions about what we covered. Went super deep. I was very, very prepared. I really wanted to make this right and really show you visually all of these factors so that now you can control them essentially, or at least the ones that you have control of, right? You can't really control your genetics, you know, can't really control your height or your age. You know what I mean? But there's a plenty of other factors that we talked about today, specifically the four factors to min max your fat loss. Super important. Any questions, feedback, comments, key takeaways? They hop in the chat here. Um, Danny, you mentioned Mark. That's why I buy whole wheat flour and that weird peanut butter. I wonder. I'm curious about the weird peanut butter. I personally love peanut butter. And sure, there's protein in it, but it's majority fat, right? Um, I don't know if you guys use this, but something that I was buying religiously um every single month almost was powdered peanut butter, simply because it's peanut butter but like minus majority of the fat, so it's primarily just protein. And it's not whey protein, right? It's peanut butter, but just in powder form without all the excess fats. There's still some carbs, which again, it's kind of like small amount, but I used brands like PB Fit was a super popular one. It was like processed 3 times to get the powdered consistency, and I would throw that in smoothies without adding the additional um, fat. So I was able to save those calories from fats and just strictly focus, excuse me, on the protein benefits. And then you stack that on top of like a protein supplement that's pure protein. Now you got like 30, 40 grams of protein. That's all getting, processed pretty efficiently. Um, so yeah, thought I'd add. Danny, you mentioned I work at home. I'm on my computer or tablet all the time. Not sure what to do to increase movement other than walk or something. Yeah, a a lot of the changes can be in a lot of creative ways. So, for example, the biggest impact that has had, uh, I'd probably say the thing that has had the biggest impact on my life and a lot of our warriors is really just changing the work environment. So again, something that I did was buy a standing desk. That investment alone has paid dividends in really having more activity, more calorie burn, and things like that. Another option is more frequent breaks at work, which is going to have a significant impact on just your your mindset as well, the cognitive part, as well as the physical part as well. So taking more frequent breaks, setting timers. throughout the day for activity. So basically, a popular timer that I used to have when I was really, really inactive in some periods, some moments, was I used to set a timer that literally just said move. Literally, it was just timer. It was just like it would go off. I would set it like every hour, sometimes every hour and a half, depending on what I'm doing, and it would just say move. And I would just whatever I was doing, I would just grab my phone or whatever, turn off the alarm. I would just move. I would just like walk around. I would go to the kitchen or go outside for a walk or something like that. So, and then I would just go back to what I was doing. So it's a really great way to kind of solidify those kind of habits. If it's a struggle for you to implement something new, because over time I didn't need to set an alarm, right? I just naturally would, I just taught my body to how to just know when it's not moving for an extended period of time, and I just naturally I get up. Like I don't have to set an alarm or anything, but that took programming, constant alarms going off in my brain in order for my body to respond. So little things like that. Again, uh, going back to the previous conversations about goal setting and traction and distraction, it's really being intentional with your activity and really being intentional to want to move your body intentionally. And not really doing it after the fact of being like, oh, I haven't moved. It's really creating that intention to move and understanding why and how to actually do that. And you could do that in a lot of simple ways, and then you can also, have a lot of creative ways like a standing desk and things like that. So I hope that helps. Olia said that was some serious depth. Thank you. I wanted to provide as much information as possible and do it in a way that's not overly scientific and confusing. So hopefully, it wasn't too much. Just know that there's a lot of variables when it comes to fat loss, and this is why we approach it like an RPG, right? There's a lot of variables that we can change and influence, and a lot of variables that we don't have control of. And we need to be kind of aware of these things. Otherwise, we'd be focusing on the wrong things, you know? Uh, you mentioned, Danny, that I mean I can stop anytime, but I don't want to walk all the time. And I don't know what else to do. Yeah. I mean, if you don't like walking, uh, there's a lot of creative ways. Like I know Mark got one of those pedaling things, the foot pedal, the cycling thing when he's gaming. That was a game changer for him, right? And to be honest, that was like the first time I've heard someone uh utilizing that in such a powerful and consistent way. And it's something that I now suggest. Is if you don't want to physically move your body and move around and have your, you know, be aware of where you're going, like a standing walking pad is an option. Or what Mark uses is that, that cycle, that foot pedal, that where he's just moving his legs, right? So moving your legs, moving your whole body, getting up, doing stuff, going outside. There's so many things that you can do, and also you don't have to just walk outside and just like look at trees, right? You can put on a podcast. You could listen to music, right? You could go have a phone conversation with somebody, right? That's something that Olia and I did today, for example. It's Olia's dad's birthday today, so we went on a walk and we were, moving our body and talking on the phone rather than sitting on the couch and having a conversation. So and on top of that, it was raining. So we took out our umbrellas, we walked outside, and we were talking on the phone. Like, sure, we're getting a little wet, but we were getting our activity in, first thing in the morning. So little stuff like that throughout the day. Even something as simple as like going to the kitchen and making a meal, right? And like following a recipe and like getting the ingredients, moving around in the kitchen, and doing stuff like that. Like instead of, for example, going out and ordering out for lunch, a great option is to spend 30 minutes, for lunch to cook a meal, for example. Um, right? Imagine, the movement that you're having throughout the kitchen compounded for 5, 6, 7 days a week can add up if what you're putting in your body is majority protein, right? And you're staying in a calorie deficit, right? If being in the kitchen more means eating more, then that means you might want to choose something else like, going out for a walk or something. So, um, yeah, little stuff like that. Then, Olia mentioned body maintenance stretches as well. Yeah, that's super, super big. The Russian tricep is huge. That to give everyone a refresher, that is phase 4 of the dynamic warm up for all of your combat training. Remember, there's 6 phases. Phase 1 is the banded stuff when it comes to activation and moving your body. So if you are seated for a long period of time, remember there's a lot of negative effects, a lot of inactive muscles that are not really being mobilized, and no blood flows going into these areas. So something that you can do is you can do the banded Russian tricep to again, you know, mobilize your joints, your ligaments, and start to activate all the muscles in the back of your body here, the upper back, the shoulders, rear delts, and things like that. So that's something that I do every single day. So that's one other method of movement is, you know, developing the habit to undo the negative effects of sitting down for extended period of time. Because even though I'm standing now, right after the call, I'm going to be going back to focused work. I'm going to be seated, right? So, um, pretty much every hour or so, I do some sort of banded work. Sometimes I do some pull ups. Sometimes I hang on my pull up bar. Sometimes I do push ups. You know, I just intentionally create movement. And the more movement that you have throughout the day that's intentional, uh, the longer you'll live and the more fat loss that you'll have over time. So it's really just figuring out, um, doing something. Right? That's the big thing. Start with something and then grow from there. And it could be something as simple as having a band, you know, like available right next to you as a reminder to just like, hey, I'm just gonna use this and do some banded pull aparts and just move my body, you know, just really undo any anything when it comes to sitting down and being in a slouch position for a long period of time. So get creative. Creativity is the way. Danny mentioned I don't think I ever walk outside. That's a game changer. I used to never walk outside either, and then I started, and then I was able to control my weight loss and fat loss significantly. You know, rain, sleet, or snow. Sometimes I'm always I'm always finding a way to get outside. And then if I don't want to walk in the rain, I go on a treadmill. I find another way. So if you have those pieces of equipment available, go for it. Or you could just jack Mark's, mini, cycling pedals and just you can use that if he's not using it. Or you could fight him over it. You could duel him to see who gets access. Yeah, yeah, cage match. Yeah. You gotta do a cage match to see who could get like 20 minutes of activity on the pedals. See now this is how you can have fun with it. See, getting creative. I love it. And then Olia mentioned find outdoor walks to be therapeutic too, focusing on my breathing and surrounding plants and critters. Oh my god, yeah. My morning walks are so important just to like take my mind away from all the responsibilities, all the stress and anxiety and all that. Like, it is one of the best ways to just process your thoughts and also be creative as well. I've had so many creative ideas on walks and things like that. Sometimes I'm walking on like main roads, you know, and sometimes I listen to a podcast, sometimes I walk in the woods area, sometimes I walk in cul-de-sacs, like whatever is, available, whatever is gonna, you know, get you outside, whether that's walking around the block or walking in your yard. There's so many ways, there's so many ways that you can kind of get the activity in, you know. So yeah, if you are uh looking for ideas, feel free to um, ask people inside the Discord. We're going to be way more active in the Discord moving forward. We're just really, really focused on a lot of the changes that we're going to be implementing for everyone at Infinite this month. So my apologies on behalf of everyone here at Infinite on our team. We're going to be making sure that we're providing more value inside our Discord, sharing more, and giving everyone more opportunities to ask questions and share as well. So, other than that, stay tuned for the rest of this month. Got some exciting stuff uh, starting this week, and then later on this month, specifically for the Academy. So, stay tuned. And yeah, looking forward to seeing everyone's progress for the month of May. It's going to be another great month of growth. If we apply some of the principles that I shared with you today when it comes to fat loss here, um, inside the gym, outside the gym, whatever that may be, remember to focus on conquering the day. And as always, this is your Master Wizard Walt here by your side as your guide on your Infinite Academy adventure. And I'll see all you warriors next Sunday and inside of the Infinite Discord. Drop your questions. Let us know your progress throughout the week. And I'll see you all there. Take care, everyone.